Welcome back, everyone. The title of this video is about not apologizing for being ourselves. And I'm aiming for this discussion to circle around the common feelings of shame and self-censorship that we often have. Kind of fear about truly expressing who we are, what we need, what we desire to people around us, often for fear of being judged. And this fear of being judged often conjures up a deep social anxiety within us. We want to say the right things to be accepted, and we don't want to truly reveal our core attributes, our core essential nature, let's say our weird interests and our quirky sense of humor, because we may have been judged for that in the past, perhaps we've been conditioned by our friends and our family into being a certain character, and we portray that character in order to have social situations which are harmonious and relatively fulfilling, but they're not truly fulfilling because we never feel truly seen. I think the most nourishing relationships we have in life are where we feel truly comfortable with another person, where we feel this freedom to let down our guard, to let down that sort of ruthlessly self-critical ego that many of us have, and to just be free with the other person. I myself, I noticed this feeling of freedom in my relationship with my wife, who was one of the very, very few, if not the only person, who I felt able to just be free and goofy and comfortable and not judged for being strange. In many of my social relationships in the past, there's always been parts of myself which I could never fully reveal. To take one example, the part of myself which is very deep, very philosophical, I've often had to sort of suppress that part of myself because it was sort of viciously rejected whenever it will sort of come out in most of my past interactions with people, because a lot of people become intimidated by that sort of stuff. And if it was to sort of surface up within myself, it would always be this sort of one-sided conversation. And, I came to learn to suppress that part of myself and to not allow it to come out and flourish. And instead to, present a more socially desirable persona of myself, which is perhaps more lighter, more spontaneous, more comedic, which of course is a part of myself. But I had to sort of overemphasize that part of myself in order to not, make people dislike me. And I guess sort of this reveals a part of myself in the past who was overly fixated upon wanting to be liked, wanting to be accepted. And I think this feeling of wanting to be accepted is a very deep and human feeling that many of us have. And in fact, it leads to a situation where our sense of self-esteem stems from, the validation we get from other people, whether they seem interested in speaking to us or being with us and stuff. And now, through much of my life, I've always had this sort of sense of isolation. Because if I were to be truly who I am, it would often repel people. I did have, friends and stuff like that growing up and throughout most of my life, but uh, there were friends with a certain persona of myself, a certain character, which was me. It was a part of me, but it wasn't the whole representation of myself. And I think when we have to present a certain persona in order to merge with a certain friend or a friend group, it leads to this kind of fragmentation within us, where we lose ourselves in that character which other people expect us to be. And, we see no alternative because we feel, that, oh, this is just how I have to be in order to get the right sort of social responses and stuff, the smiles and appreciation, the laughter, the comfort, the ease in social situations. When we start getting too real, it's like we're not playing the social game correctly. We're breaking the rules, and consequently, you get sort of weird expressions or people looking at you strange when you say something that is not within the bounds of the game. Perhaps I'm describing social situations in a very autistic manner, but this is just, I suppose, part of how I would process it. But in my own sort of journey through all of this, what I started to do was just crave more solitude, really, and to learn to be more okay with just being myself. I'm not trying to seek validation from being around people, to become detached, really, from whether a particular person likes me or they don't like me. And I think this is what it means to cultivate self-confidence and to cultivate a deep and immovable sense of authenticity. It occurs when we become detached from whether we are liked or disliked from a particular person. When we become courageous enough to stand on our own 2 feet and to express what we wish to express, to be true to ourselves, in that freedom, it doesn't matter. And there's a beauty in how, when we start to be authentic and true to ourselves and to just reduce that inner friction of performing a certain character, when we start to be true to ourselves, we will naturally repel the people who need to be repelled, and we will attract the people who we need to attract. Our friend group will form itself around the person we are becoming. And this is what it means to grow into a more deeper social alignment. We stop compromising our standards in being around people who are not aligned with who we are in our entirety. And we begin to start aligning to people who are going to support and nourish and accept the person we are becoming. But in that in-between period, there is a deep period of solitude, a deep period where we are beginning to accept who we are and to understand who we are. And I think it is often out of fear of this solitude, this fear of being alone, that we tend to accept and compromise misaligned social circles. We avoid the introspection and the shadow work by continuing to be around these sorts of people because it's comfortable, it's familiar, but it is not true, it's not authentic. But when we take that leap of faith, we sit with ourselves and we try to understand ourselves and cultivate our own inner sense of self-esteem, which is not dependent upon the opinions of others. In that process of transformation, there is true freedom. A lot of us, we are attached to the opinions of others. We feel totally and utterly beholden to them. If someone criticizes us, we are thoroughly damaged by it. And if someone, compliments us, we are, completely high from it. We're attached. And a lot of this comes because we do not know ourselves. And when we don't know ourselves, we allow ourselves to be defined by the opinions of others. We become slaves to their often inaccurate and incomplete perceptions, because there is no one who knows yourself more than yourself. Therefore, the opinion which you should value the highest is your own opinion, your own estimation of yourself and your abilities and your value as a person. And often the most rare and creative and innovative people tend to be the most isolated, because they are misunderstood by the masses, by most people in society. And that leads to a deep sense of isolation, and then people think, am I the problem? Why is it that most people do not see what I see? Why is it that most people are not interested in the same things that I do? And often that we sort of internalize that external rejection, rather than realizing that we are just a rare individual. And if we remain aligned on our own path, we will attract other rare individuals who actually understand who we are, who can actually see truly the light that we have within us. The isolation that occurs for rare souls is one of this alchemical transformation, where we transmute all those energies of social rejection and this constant misunderstanding that occurs between us and our development in the social world, and all the anxiety and self-doubt. When we transmute that into raw confidence and raw will, and the ability to just be completely self-directed and completely detached from the frivolous opinions of other people, then we become truly powerful. We become this sort of arrow moving through reality, which is totally unwavering. And if we wish to do truly great things with our life, we need to learn how to conjure up our motivation and our validation within. Because that leads to confidence that is earned. It's not a confidence that is stemming from faking it until you make it. It's this confidence from feeling deeply and knowing within yourself that the path I am on is rare. The path I am on is going to be misunderstood by other people, and that is okay. That is just a necessary aspect of the journey. And we should know that we are on the right path. When we feel that vibrancy, that vitality within us, we are on the right path. I want you all to really clue in to those sorts of feelings within you. Clue into those feelings where you are shrinking yourself in order to be accepted, when you are censoring your words, when you're holding back your tongue in order to, to ease the anxiety of the other person. Notice your energy, notice your attention and where it is flickering from. And yeah, I think I'll leave that at that. But it's been good and useful to all of you guys out there, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye, everyone.